Senator Gutierrez, thanks so much for joining us today. You have been in local public service for nearly 2 decades now. What was the main motivating factor for deciding to seek federal office?
Well, Monica, thank you for having me. I'll tell you that Texas is really broken, and we've been broken for a very long time. We have people like Ted Cruz that would rather divide us as a state than bring us together. We have to start talking about real solutions to the real problems that are facing us, whether it's education or healthcare or fixing the electrical grid, or even common sense gun solutions like raising the age limit, extreme risk protective orders, and closing the gun show loophole. 66% of Republicans are in favor of common sense gun reform, and Ted Cruz voted against it. He voted against an infrastructure bill that would bring $66 billion of resources to Texas. Basically construction and infrastructure all over, highways, hospitals, you name it. But yet he shows up at the ribbon cuttings and pretends that he was part of the process in bringing that to us. You don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to vote against the debt ceiling because you'd rather have us in bankruptcy. I mean, this is the kind of legislator he's been. When I was a young man, when I was a little boy, the senator would come down, the congresswoman, they'd come down from Washington, they'd say, I brought these resources to build this highway or this hospital or this new school. I created 10,000 jobs or 3,000 jobs. This man doesn't do that, and very few people do that anymore. We've got to get back to bringing back common sense solutions for Texans, creating opportunity, allowing people to have part of that American dream. I was born the son of immigrants. And my parents taught me, if you work hard, this country will do for you. And so I aim to do that as the next United States Senator of Texas, is work very hard for the people of Texas to make sure that we're getting back to common sense solutions.
Your launch video talked a lot about frustration, namely that you felt based on the state's response to the Uvalde massacre, frustration with the overall leadership and direction of the state. Why do you think that is a message that will resonate with voters?
Well, Uvalde changed my life. I mean, it really did. It changed my worldview, and it changed my view of life in general. There's no greater policy issue. If you don't have your child, inflation doesn't matter, the cost of gas doesn't matter. If you don't have your little baby because they were taken in such a horrible way, the rest just doesn't make a difference. And when I saw the failure and I uncovered and kept investigating and had to play investigator, it was really a problem. As I saw that ambulatory services weren't there, law enforcement didn't act for 77 minutes, no communications to speak of. This governor's office had been asked for 5 years for resources to buy better radios in this community. That didn't happen. But the failure is bigger than that. 800 people died in a winter storm. We need a senator that's going to say, look, we're going to tie on to the eastern or western grid so that never happens again. They have worse storms in North Dakota and upstate New York, and they handle it. 800 people don't die. That has happened because of people like Ted Cruz and others that would rather have us focusing on some fuzzy object over here, blaming some people on the margins, immigrants, LGBTQ, you name it, than to have us look at the real problems that we're facing in Texas. And the real problems are right in front of us. And we can do them, we can solve them. We have the resources to do great big things. We need to have serious people in Washington that are willing to talk about those things.
During this session, you were by far the most outspoken legislator when it comes to gun restrictions. We've seen at times that has hurt Texas Democrats in a general election. Do you think this time will be different?
Well, listen, I own guns. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I don't own any AR-15s. I don't need one. At the end of the day, all I was asking for were common sense gun solutions like raising the age limit. The way that young man walked into a gun shop on 3 different days, it just reeked of red flags, right? You should have had an extreme risk protective order that someone would have said, this looks strange. Let's go do something. Let's skate these guns for a little bit. Find out what this young man is up to. We do not have extreme risk protective orders. We don't have an age limit. And we need to close the gun show loophole. Today, anybody could go into a gun show and buy any kind of weapon without even so much as showing a driver's license. That is simply crazy. 66% of Republicans are in favor of the legislation that I'm talking about. Ted Cruz doesn't care. He only cares about staying in power so that he can continue to maintain the nonsense that he's pushing, which is, he talks about, Disney and China and all sorts of garbage, rather than to do the work, be our U.S. Senator and bring us the resources of government. Give us the benefit of the bargain. We pay taxes, we're supposed to get stuff, working roads, working infrastructure, working hospitals. We need to get back to that.
Even though the gun restrictions that you were pushing for at the state level are what you describe as common sense, and 66% of voters say they support, Republicans did not find it common sense. In fact, in your chamber, they didn't even hold hearings for the legislation you were proposing. So I'm wondering if you think that you might have better luck with pushing some of these priorities that you had during this session at the federal level.
Well, listen, as the next United States Senator of Texas, I look forward to working with Chris Murphy, who has had to deal with everything in his state, and other senators that have had to deal with this, and really look at trying to find common sense solutions here, because we must get to a point where we understand that children matter more than guns. They matter more than money. We have to communicate this to the Republican office holders, that their own constituents, Republican voters, want to see change on this issue. I think that they need to work on truly understanding what people are facing, because God forbid this happen again. As I told the Lieutenant Governor one day, someday this is going to happen to someone you know. It's going to happen to someone that Ted Cruz knows. So each and every one of these people is going to have to confront this issue that is facing everyday Americans. And we have to do something. We have to do at least the minimum to safeguard our children.
Are there any lessons you're taking away from this session in terms of negotiating with Republicans on some of your priorities?
Well, listen, I'll keep pushing, both now in the Texas Senate and beyond, in the United States Senate. I'll keep pushing, because you must. The lesson is, if you work hard, I've worked hard all my life. I'm the son of immigrants. My parents taught me to work hard and educate myself, and good things will happen. That this country will do good things for you if you work hard. I intend to work hard for the people of the United States, people of Texas, and bring us back to a place where we're all working together to lift our economy, to lift our hopes, to lift our inspirations, to do the great things of America. Not to scapegoat people, not to pick on the most marginalized of our society and blame them for everything that's wrong. That's not only not right and not just, it's not the truth. The truth is, a lot of our systems are broken and they need fixing. Texans need to have the benefit of the bargain. Give us the stuff that government is supposed to give.
What systems have you seen really crippling over the past 2 decades in which you've been in local service, and how would you want to fix those and address them at the federal level?
So we certainly saw everything that happened in law enforcement and ambulatory services in Uvalde. Rural Texas, rural America is hurting tremendously. Mental health care crisis in Texas is dismal. We have the most resources in the United States, and yet we have the poorest amount of resources allocated to mental health. We are 45th in education funding, 45th in performance on education. There's a correlation there. We certainly have to be able to look at health care. Working class families have to dip into their pockets between $6,000 and $10,000 a year to be able to pay for their out-of-pocket expenses. That's simply not right. They should have the same kind of health care that Ted Cruz or Colin Allred has. They should be able to have a health care system that's going to work for them without breaking the bank. It's simply not right what's happening right now.
I want to switch topics, because obviously you still have your day job as a state senator while you'll be doing this campaign. One of the conflicts that you might have post-Labor Day, which is considered the kickoff of election season unofficially by many, is the impeachment trial of Attorney General Ken Paxton, in which you will be serving as a juror. How do you plan to balance the just time demands of both of those tasks of running a federal campaign and then also serving as a juror in this unprecedented trial?
So the Constitution requires to have me there in the building. I'll do that. I'll be there during that trial. I'll fulfill my constitutional obligations. And I'll continue on my spare time between my practice, my business practice, and what we do in policy to communicate to Texans all across the state as much as we can. My family and I know that this is going to be hard, and we have made a commitment to working for all Texans, from Brownsville to the Panhandle, from El Paso to East Texas, and everywhere in between. We're going to be talking about the issues that are truly ailing us, because Ted Cruz doesn't want to have that conversation. He would rather talk about Disney, Barbie movies, and China than to talk about the real issues facing us. My message to him is to get to work. Get to work on the real things that matter most to ordinary Texans.
First, you'll have to face off another Democrat running in this election. That's Congressman Colin Allred of Dallas. His campaign just announced that they have more than about $8 million in their war chest for this campaign season already. How do you plan to fundraise while also working as a state senator in what seems like unrelenting special sessions in the months to come?
Well, listen, I'm no stranger to hard races. We unseated a Republican in a seat that was held by Democrats for some time, stolen by the Republicans, and we won it back. And so I'm no stranger to raising money or hard races. But I think that as we focus on the things that we value most, which is working hard, talking to people about getting the big things done that we've done throughout these last 20 years in public office, created the National Center for Warrior Resiliency, Center for Excellence here in San Antonio, that takes veterans off of opioids, and gives them better treatment procedures. Created the Farmer Suicide Prevention Act last session. Sid Miller testified in a hearing that we saved 60 lives because of my amendment. That's amazing. Farmers have the highest incidence of suicide in the entire country. Nobody knows that. We certainly protected our military bases several sessions ago from encroachment on developers that want to do that. We have a proven track record of doing things. As a city councilman, built a library, curbs, sidewalks, the basics of government and beyond. That's what government's about. It's not about being a provocateur and saying provocative statements about Barbie and Disney movies and so on. It's about doing the stuff, bringing us back some highway money, some hospital money, some education dollars. That's what it's about. It's not about voting against all of the things that are going to do that, like he did on the infrastructure bill, like he did on the debt ceiling. We have to have people in Washington that are serious and that want to have a serious discussion, bipartisan discussion sometimes even, on the things that matter most to ordinary Texans.
Your opponent, Allred, is already poising himself as someone who is doing those things in Congress, in the House, of course. How would you differentiate yourself between your opponent to primary voters before they choose who they want to be the Democratic nominee?
Yeah, listen, I'm sure he's a very nice person, but he's no disrespect to him, but he's not my opponent. My opponent is Ted Cruz. We're going to win the primary and we're going to win the general. We're going to win it because people are going to understand how hard we've worked, how hard I'm willing to work, and my whole life is based on that value. I'll outwork Colin Allred and I'll outwork Ted Cruz. And we'll have a discussion on what is really matters to people. And it's those kitchen table politics. It's how much money you can save if you had a real Medicaid expansion proposition, if you had universal health care even. Those are proposals that we need to be talking about and ensuring for Americans. We need to talk about what matters to them. I'm going to do what I need to do. Money doesn't daunt me. I'm sure people will believe in our candidacy and support us. We're going to move forward, like I always have in my life, and just remain positive and hopeful. And I think that people will follow along.
Lastly, Senator, you talk a lot in your video too about your upbringing, how you are the son of immigrants, and you are the only, I believe, bilingual candidate in this race. How are you hoping that your personal story will resonate with Texans across the state, from the Panhandle to South Texas, your backyard?
Well, I'll tell you, growing up wasn't always easy. I had two incredible parents. My stepmom who raised me, she's mom. And they worked so hard for us, and they sacrificed a lot, and they pushed us to educate ourselves. And so we were able to get through it. And I think that story is the story of a lot of Texans, is perseverance and striving. You know, you have to do your part in this country. It can't always be done for you. I mean, we have to also understand that. We have to make sure that we live in a Texas that grants opportunity to all, to where everybody can strive to that thing. And so we've seen so many things happening along the way, like the Supreme Court cutting affirmative action, that are making it harder for people to be able to have that leg up. And so we have to ensure that we're not closing the doors behind us, but we also have to do our part, and that part is working hard. That's nothing that's different from most Texans. We get it. We just have to have a fair chance. We're going to work hard for them, and I think that they're going to enjoy being part of this campaign and enjoy being part of this message.
All right, Senator, thanks for sitting down with us. Best of luck.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.